When I was in my 20s, I read a book called Cosmic Consciousness by a 19th century psychiatrist named Richard M. Buck. Dr. Buck had had an amazing vision that descended on him out of the blue. It only lasted a few moments, but he spent the next 30 years trying to understand what had happened and to analyze it in his book. As he described it, it was an overpowering sense of oneness with the cosmos and exaltation and a sense of intellectual illumination that felt absolutely real and totally blissful. And he named this experience cosmic consciousness. He coined that phrase. He didn't think it was something supernatural. What he thought was that it was a sign of a more highly evolved human being, and that the human race was indeed evolving toward cosmic consciousness. Well, you know, me at 20, I found this just hugely exciting and attractive, but impossible to make happen. Decades later, I can say that Dr. Buck's experience was not cosmic consciousness. It was a spiritual experience, and it certainly involved a wonderful kind of consciousness. But it wasn't cosmic. It had nothing to do with the universe. Buck himself understood cosmic consciousness to be characteristic of a certain kind of human, not of a certain kind of universe. There's a different kind of consciousness that I think really deserves the name cosmic consciousness. And that's what I want to talk about today. That's what I want to suggest to you. This is a kind of consciousness that doesn't require a bolt from the blue. It doesn't require that we be more highly evolved than anybody else. All it requires is that we take 3 steps, which are really available for the first time in human history, and I will get to them a little bit later. But first, I have to explain what does the word cosmic even mean? The cosmos, well, the word cosmos is the Greek word for order, and cosmos is not the same thing as the universe. What it is the order that our minds impose on the mystery of whatever is out there. Every culture known to anthropology invented a cosmos. They had a shared picture of the invisible reality beyond the ordinary world. And even though every single one of those pictures was wrong by modern scientific standards, they all succeeded in uniting the culture, in making people have an agreed upon vision of what was real. And we had that in the West too, until the rise of early modern science, which shot down the traditional pictures centuries before it could replace them. So really, from the 17th century until late in the 20th, the word cosmic didn't have an agreed upon meaning. It really is a kind of poetic, suggestive word, or at least it was until now. But now, as Joel was trying to explain to you, we actually do have the first picture of the universe as a whole that is based on solid evidence. So now the word cosmic can be used not in its kind of vague woo-woo sense, but in the sense of referring specifically to this new picture. So that's how I'm going to be using that word. So now I can define cosmic consciousness as I'm suggesting it today. Cosmic consciousness is consciousness, whether human or alien, that encompasses the universe as a whole and lives by its principles. Now, why is it important to redefine cosmic consciousness this way? The modern world is facing enormous problems, as I think some of the speakers later in the symposium will be discussing. In order to solve global scale problems, we need to have some global scale way of cooperating with each other. But what is going to unite us enough to be able to do that? What could? I really only know of one viable candidate, and it's the same thing that our ancestors used successfully for thousands of years. and that is a shared picture of the larger reality. A cosmic consciousness, in this sense, a consciousness that encompasses the universe as a whole, could in the future become the common ground that could unite us in a large enough reality so that we would have the perspective to see the long-term consequences of our actions. We could have a new picture, but this time it would be based on science that's been done by people from around the world, many countries, many religions and races, and they all agree on the same scientific standards. And that would be the basis. Now, there are many scientifically oriented people who think that science and technology really can save the world and that spirituality is either unreal or unnecessary. And then on the other hand, there are many spiritually oriented people who feel that science is really nothing but cold facts and endless technology and has nothing to contribute to a meaningful universe. But both of those positions are really in denial. They are tying one hand behind their backs while the world burns. I think it's time that we asked, with reference to science and spirituality, the same question that we women asked decades ago when we were excluded from entire professions. Why throw away half our abilities in order to preserve a prejudice? What we need in order to save our world is an accurate map of reality and also the motivation of a shared spirituality. Now, spirituality is a loaded word, so let me explain what I mean by it. And I'm going to be suggesting different kinds of definitions. These are not the words that, the ways that people normally define these words, so that's why I'm being as specific as I can. The way I'm using the word spirituality is my experience of my connection to what I believe truly exists. So that spirituality is an experience, but it's linked to what I believe truly exists. Now, by this definition, most of the modern universe is actually spiritual. Now, let me explain that with a picture. Well, first let me say that there is no spiritual realm that transcends the universe, or is outside the universe, or is independent of the laws of nature. The spiritual realm is real, but it's here in the universe, and that's what I need to explain with this image. So this is something called the cosmic Ouroboros. It's a symbol that Joel and I developed for our first book, The View from the Center of the Universe. An Ouroboros that's the Greek word for a snake swallowing its tail. And we have resurrected this ancient image to represent the universe as the range of all possible sizes. So the largest size we could say anything meaningful about is the size of the visible universe itself. So that's represented by the head of the serpent. The smallest size we can say anything meaningful about, given today's understanding of physics, is something called the Planck length, and it is represented by the tip of the tail. This is a theoretical number that's arrived at by the interaction of quantum theory and general relativity. So all the sizes that exist are in between here. And what we've done here is we've arrayed them in intervals of 10 to the fifth, which means that the size at any given tick mark, say from here to here, from any given tick mark to the next is 100,000 times larger. And each item, each icon around here is a typical item for its size scale. So up here we have the largest structure that exists really in the universe. It's a supercluster of galaxies. That's the size of a supercluster, the size of a single galaxy, the size of the distance from here to the nearby stars that make the constellation Orion, the size of the solar system, the sun, the earth, a mountain, people, an ant, a single-celled creature, one molecule, well, a DNA molecule, a single atom, the nucleus of the atom, and somewhere down here, the mysterious dark matter. Now, we're going to take a really, really fast trip all the way around the Ouroboros. And we'll start by looking at superclusters. We're not going to be flying across space in this video. We are diving in. We're zooming inward. You'll see over here an arrow pointing to the size you're looking at. Now we're diving into the galaxy, down to the size of our solar system, Earth, mountains, people, actually children, microscopic creature, the DNA inside it, into a single atom inside that DNA, deep in the atom, the nucleus, and the quarks. Now, on the cosmic Ouroboros, you will notice that there's this range of size scales in blue that's supposed to represent daylight. Those are the sizes that human beings have always been able to see with the naked eye. We have good old Earth-based intuition for things that happen in there. So let's give this special range of sizes a name. We're going to call it Midgard. Now, Midgard, in the Old Norse cosmology, was the island of human civilization and stability in the midst of the world's sea. And far across the world's sea in one direction lay the land of the giants, and far across in the other direction lay the land of the gods. Now, Midgard, on the cosmic Ouroboros, is the island of size scales that is familiar to us. But far across the sea, that is outward into the expanding universe, lies the land of incredibly giant beings, like black holes 1,000,000 times the mass of the sun, or galaxies with hundreds of billions of stars. In the other direction across the world sea, inward toward the small, lies a living cellular world, and inside that, the quantum world. And these are the evolutionary and the physical sources of everything we are and everything we ever will be. That doesn't make them gods, but compared to us, they're more prolific and ancient, universal, omnipresent. Now, inside Midgard, here, everybody knows what a physical object is. It's solid, we can measure it, we pretty much agree that it exists. But as you move outside Midgard in either direction, the concept of physical becomes more and more metaphorical until it loses its meaning. So, for example, is an electron a physical object? Well, it's not really like a little marble. An electron is a probability that something is happening. The probability is what's confirmed experimentally, so that's what's real. Is a probability a physical object? How about on the large scale? What about a supercluster? Is that really a physical object? A supercluster can be a sheet of 10,000 enormous galaxies and many smaller ones, and it's being ripped apart by wildly expanding space. Looks like a structure to us because the ripping apart is going to take billions of years. But is that a physical object? The fact is that physical is really a clear characteristic only in Midgard. It's not characteristic of most of the universe. In fact, the phrase physical universe is actually an oxymoron. So my point is that the physical world is surrounded by the spiritual world. Why do I call it that? Because it's only knowable through cosmic consciousness. There's a wonderful description of this in Deepak's book about Buddha. He writes, like the dense air of the jungle tapering gradually into the thin atmosphere of the mountains, the material world tapered off into subtler and subtler worlds, and that is exactly what happens in the modern universe. The physical world tapers off into subtler and subtler worlds. And I'm calling those worlds spiritual because, as I said, they can only be known through cosmic consciousness. So there is no physical-spiritual dichotomy. Physical to spiritual is a continuum, and the physical world is at the center. In the Bible, Jacob has a dream, and in the dream, there's a ladder that goes from earth to heaven, and angels are going up and down the ladder. But the real Jacob's ladder is the cosmic Ouroboros, and the angels going up and down are our educated consciousnesses. Part of cosmic consciousness is being able to go up and down the ladder. Can any of the stuff I've just said to you be useful in the real world? Well, not only useful, but essential. Everything, every object, every event, every living creature can only be the size that it is. It cannot exist at any other place on the cosmic Ouroboros except where it is. The law of Ouroboros thinking, kind of a meta law, is that different physical laws control on different size scales. And this is why things can't be different from the size that they are. Example, have you ever wondered why people can be kind and generous and wise, and yet a committee is never kind, generous, and wise, or a corporation, or a government? Differences in size occur not only with objects, but with the complexity of human interactions. So this is why a collective cannot be anything like a person. A collective cannot, in principle, act or feel like a human being. I remember in the depths of the recession, the New York Times business section ran a headline that read, "Have banks no shame?" No, banks can't have shame because shame is a human emotion, and banks don't feel human emotions. No large organization or even a small organization feels human emotions. Corporations are not people. Hollywood missed a big opportunity by not understanding this when they did the King Kong movie, especially, for example. They show what looks like a normal gorilla in front of a miniature set. But if King Kong were really 5 times the height of a normal gorilla, he couldn't be the same shape as a normal gorilla. He'd have to be hugely bulked up in order to hold up his enormous additional weight. And that would have been a lot more terrifying. Now, when people mess this up, they don't understand scales, we call this scale confusion. And scale confusion is absolutely rampant in the metaphors that are being used today, and they can be extremely misleading. For example, we are now hearing calls to honor and to value the religious beliefs of hospitals and churches. But hospitals and churches don't have religious beliefs. No organization has any beliefs. They have policies. It doesn't matter if an organization is religious or not. It has no beliefs, no feelings, and it can't be offended. Only individual humans can be offended. So scale confusion can sometimes be cluelessness, but sometimes it can be sophistry, and it's really good to know the difference. So one last question. Can cosmic consciousness, as I'm suggesting it, can it make us happier? I have known several people who told me that they were not going to have children because they didn't want to bring them into such a messed up world. And I even had one friend who was considering suicide because after years of working in environmental causes, she felt it was all becoming hopeless. Well, these people are truly suffering, but what are they suffering from? That's something I call emotional scale confusion. We evolved in small tribes. We developed our emotions so that we could deal with people who were around us. But today, we are being inundated with everything that's going wrong in the entire world. So, as we are learning to think on more than one size scale, we need to be able to feel consciously on more than one size scale. There is no reason why our feelings should have to be the same about everything. The laws of nature aren't. Navigating between the personal and the political and the cosmic is a spiritual act for anyone who is trying to live consciously in a meaningful universe. Demoralization because of the world situation is emotional scale confusion. Our job is to live with joy. Our best hope is happy, energized people working creatively and enthusiastically to solve these world problems, but who are living guiltlessly fun and loving lives on the small scale, whether or not we succeed on the large. As Emma Goldman said, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution. There is no political ideology and no religion today that can unite humanity around the world. But a cosmic consciousness might. And if we are smart, we'll go back to the strategy that our ancestors used successfully for thousands of years and recognize again what Václav Havel so beautifully called the revitalized authority of the universe. Our spirituality today is like a potted plant that is root-bound and can't grow. The pot is made of old metaphors and stories and images. How many people have outdone Buddha and Moses and Jesus and people who lived thousands of years ago? People make great spiritual progress, or can, in their lifetimes, but they don't outdo the great masters. Why? Because our spiritual roots are in the same pot. Not only are science and spirituality not antagonistic, but science may be the only way to break out of that pot and put our roots back in the earth and the cosmos where they belong and where they can grow freely. So I promised you 3 steps to this kind of cosmic consciousness, and here they are. 1 is learn what the universe is. 2, experience it from your place at the center. And 3, return to this awareness whenever you make a decision in life, and that could change the world. Thank you.
Nancy, just for 1 second. I don't know if Leonard is here. Leonard Milanoy? Leonard? So Leonard and I did a tour together on our book called War of the Worldviews, which you've seen. And the subtitle of the book was Science versus Spirituality. And as we kind of spent time with each other, we realized that that was a wrong subtitle. And today you've illumined us that an expanded science would be a spiritual science.
Yeah.
It's the only way to solve problems like global warming and eco-destruction, the extinction of species, and everything that we've done in the name of science, actually, devoid of meaning.
Well, science and spirituality without the other one are very dangerous. I mean, the religions have done a lot of damage, too, by refusing to recognize scientific reality. And in many cases, in earlier centuries, even killing people who claimed things that were true, like Bruno.
I know you're writing a book on God,
I am.
a God we can all believe in.
Well, yes, I'm writing a book with a tentative title called A God That Could Be Real. And it's really not about believing. I'm always trying to redefine these ideas to be useful in the modern world. And what I did was I said to myself, well, given the way that we now know that the universe works, is there anything that could actually exist in the modern universe that would be worthy of the name God? So I eliminated the whole question of existence. I started with what exists. And it's very interesting to ask that question, what is worthy of the name God? Because then we have to start asking, what do we really want from God? What would make a God worthy? And, of course, what interesting phenomena here can be interpreted in really useful ways. So that's what that's my
When I read your book with Joel, one of the things that I kind of was struck by was when Joel says that when people visualize or imagine the Big Bang, they think of a little dot on a television screen that expands in all directions. But actually the Big Bang happened everywhere, all at the same time. It contained, correct me if I'm misquoting you, it contained all wheres and all whens. And here is a little dot that is less than the period at the end of a sentence. And now we have a universe that spans at least 47 billion light years to the cosmic horizon, with a dark energy that is ripping apart galaxies faster than the speed of light. And the only words that come to me is omnipresence, omnipotence, and omniscience, because those words describe very accurately the universe you are describing, and very accurately the consciousness that you're describing.
Right.
Thank you, Nancy Abrams.
Okay.